Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you this morning to our session on leveraging digital advancements for early warning, dissemination, and communication. My name is Vanessa Gray, and I am from the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, which is the UN specialized agency for information and communication technologies and digital technologies. I'm also the lead for the Pillar 3 of the Early Warnings for All initiative. So this event this morning is part of the Early Warning for All series. And we've had a number of events on early warnings for all this week, but just to recall, this is of course a very ambitious initiative with the objective to ensuring that every person on Earth is protected by an early warning system. Here we look at the entire early warning system value chain, from risk information led by UNDRR to monitoring, forecasting, and analysis of weather events led by WMO, to Pillar 3, warning, dissemination, and communication, which is led by ITU. And so this is once we know something is happening, how do we actually make sure that those at risk can be alerted and understand the warning. To the fourth pillar, which is led by IFRC, about preparedness and response capabilities. Now we know all of these pillars, all of these parts of the early warning system are equally important. If one of them doesn't work, the entire system does not work. That said, we, that is ITU, do believe also that today a lot of the early warning systems and initiatives do not sufficiently pay attention to the Pillar 3 on warning, dissemination, and communication. We believe that there are many systems where we actually know something is happening, but we are not able to reach all of those at risk. And this is true especially today in a world where we see incredible growth in digital networks and services. So many more channels exist, so many more opportunities exist today to reach those at risk. And this is something we want to talk about today in our panel discussion about the opportunities not just of upcoming new and fancy technologies, and we'll see some of those, but also of more traditional technologies, because we believe that even there's still more things we can do. But before, so the idea today is to have a panel discussion with a great number of panelists, but before this, I would like to ask my colleague Amir Riaz to join me here and to give an overview of the Pillar 3 and the opportunities that we see in terms of the technologies and services. Amir, thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amir. I'm part of the ITU Regional Office team for the Asia and the Pacific. So before the panel, let me just give you an idea of what we have been working, and how we are using digital technologies and also AI in our work under the Pillar 3 of the EW4A. So just to start and say that this session that we are doing is in partnership with one of our members, key members, GSMA. GSMA is here represented by Bryce. He will be on the panel as well. So GSMA is an organization that represents the mobile operators, and they represent the telecom industry who are providing the terrestrial cellular mobile services. Their mandate comes from the M4H program, the Mobile for Humanitarian Innovation, which gives the work to accelerate and the delivery and impact of the digital humanitarian assistance. And they are also the inaugurator of the HCC, the Humanitarian Connectivity Charter, and ITU was involved in developing this charter, in which a lot of private sector companies are part, and they support in the mobile industry to prepare for, respond to, and recover from the sudden onset of emergencies. So this the introduction of GSMA, and about the ITU, because we are a little media shy organization, but we have been there for a very long time. We are the oldest UN agency, that specialized agency, with a history of 159 years. the one unique other thing is that apart from the 194 member states with the administrations, we also have the membership from the companies, private sector industry, like the GSMA, Microsoft, Starlink, and the mobile operators, the bigger mobile, they are all part of the ITU to help us develop the standards, the radio communication frequencies usage, and the development of ICT technology to our different 3 sectors that we are organized into. So our mandate comes from our plenipotentiary resolution 136 and also the resolution 34, which was agreed during the WTDC, World Telecom Development Conference in Kigali in 2022. But during the COP27, we were tasked to lead the pillar 3 on early warning, dissemination, and communication. And the role and task involves that all and everyone on earth should be able to receive the early warning messages. And we have seen earlier in the video as well how important the early warning is to save the lives and cost ultimately. Going into Asia Pacific specifically, there were around the world there were 30 countries that were evaluated as high-risk country. 10 were in the Asia and the Pacific region. The ones that are mentioned here, these are the 10 high-risk countries that we are taking up in the first phase of the early warning for all implementation. You will see the blue ones. These are the ones that are in the Pacific. So small island states, they are more vulnerable to the especially the natural hazards. So they are given a focus. Plus you will see the LLDCs like Laos and Nepal as well in the list as well. This doesn't mean that we will stop here, but these are the first cohorts of the countries that we are going to assist. So how we are going assisting? So our approach is starting from the people. It's a people-centric approach. We put the people in center, what they want from early warning. So what we evaluated is that they want timely warnings to be reaching to them, and inclusiveness. Everyone should get the message, no matter if they have any disability. They should be able to reach the message and communicate it through their preferred comms channel. We are focusing not only on the mobile, but also on the broadcasting, traditional broadcasting, radio broadcasting, any other channel which can communicate the early warning. The alerts should be clear, meaning that they are understandable and actionable. We don't want the message to be too technical, that it could not be read and understood by the communities at last mile, but also it should be accurate so that it means something and the people can take action. And lastly, that is getting a way more importance, that it should be trustable, because in some cases when the message is going from, let's say, social media, it doesn't go get the action that is needed. So the trust has to be there in the messaging. And what we want to achieve is, if the source of the message is clear and the same message is communicated through multiple channels, it increases the trust. So under this, we have different assistances that we can deliver. So just to, on the higher level, we could have the technical advice and assessments that are done, but then there are some more technological solution like the DCM that I will go into the detail as well. We have some economic scope on some of the last mile connectivity solutions, and also if you want to implement cell broadcasting, we would be able to have help and the RFPs and the costing of the solution. The NETP is one of our bigger product on the policy level. That is, NETP stands for National Emergency Telecom Plans, and we have been working with a lot of different administrations to have it in place. I will go much more into details of how it works, but just to understand, this is the bigger picture. The picture that you see is how the communication structure works. I'll put here the 3 squares. If you see the blue one, these are the ones where you get the data internally, usually from the sensors, tsunami sensor, GLOF sensors, weather sensors. These are the ones that are distributed all over and implemented by different ministries or departments at the world. On the yellow one, this is a place where the public is, where you need the channel, the information transmitted, and it could be to different media and also to different other coordinating agencies, maybe like the security agencies or first responders. They are in the yellow box. And then there's a third one, that is the red one, which is where you take the information, analyze it, and then put it in a clear and actionable way. Now, in the blue and the yellow box, we have a very limited maneuvering. We have the technological solutions, but the live feeds or the sensors, they are usually displaced, and they don't have much computing power. So we are limited to the bandwidth that is required for these situations, and also the computing power at the terminal. And same goes for the yellow one. If we want the people at the last mile, they might not have like smartphones, they might have only the feature phones, or they might have only radios. So the solutions are available. We can use the apps, but we will not be able to cover all the people. So the inclusivity would not be there. So in that two areas, we need a very low-tech solutions because of the user terminals that are required. But in the red one, which is a centralized, this is where we could use a lot of technological evolutions, and this is where we are using the many of the AI solutions. I will go into the detail as well. Now, the first and foremost is that all the three boxes had to be coordinated, so that it alerts, it reaches from the sensors to everyone in a real time. And this is where we use the common alerting protocol, which is the ITU standardized X1303 protocol that we use. Instead of me going into detail, I think the video that I will run, it will explain a lot on the CAP. Can we have the voice as well? So just to give you an example of, this is the CAP message, how it looks at, usually it's generated by the alerting authorities. It could be different countries which have to be notified. This is an example from Tanzania. You will see a lot of headers. The template is there of the CAP message. And one important thing to see over here as well, that in the image that you see, there are coordinates also mentioned. This is the area where the CAP message would go. And these coordinates are in the polygon message at the I'm not sure if you see, the coordinates are mentioned in the last line as well. So a CAP message gives a complete information, and the relevant agencies can take out the information that they need. Now coming to the other part, that is how we are using the AI. This is and why we need to use AI. There are two problems that we need to solve. When the disasters strike, we don't have the clear picture of where the access networks are down. And the second, that is during the early warning stage, who is not covered and where they are. We know that we have the statistics that's X number of population is not covered by agency, but where exactly they are, this is a problem when we are trying to solve by this disaster connectivity map. The solution is a mapping service. We use it on demand, and I will let you know why we do it on demand, because it's highly consuming the resources. And also the evaluating the resident population that is not in the coverage zone. These coverage maps could be cellular mobile, or radio, or TV, or any broadcast medium that you can think of or using in the dissemination of information. So it's a high-level platform. We have developed it in ITU and combines multiple data sources through the collaboration of different agencies, ETC, in GSMA. We have a lot of data sources in which we use in developing these data DCM maps. Just to give you an idea of what we used it in the first in Tonga. You remember there was a huge submarine undersea volcanic disruption. This is where you use, just look at the red ones. The red ones are the ones where the connectivity was, and this was on 16th of December before and you can see here the coverage of the clouds in gray as well. Everything was going normal. Suddenly, when you see a disruption, you see all the coverage gone. We are using the checking data points, and you will see from red to white. This white means there is disruption. And in below, you can also see a sudden disruption from a high level peak of data to almost null that is going on. So we were able to not only see the disruption, but also pinpoint where are the possible entities. But we didn't keep it there. We moved it to the other islands as well. The main were there. You see this picture is on 19th of February. Here, the black ones are where the connectivity has still been disrupted, even on 19th December. The actual happened on 18th of January. So even after 1 month, the connectivity hasn't gone back. Similarly, on 24, you will see the island that is below. Just let me compare EUA island. You will see the connectivity restored on 24th of February. But still, one Hapai Islands, they are still remain unconnected. And it was way in the 10th of August that the connectivity got restored, because there were two cables that were disrupted. One was the international cable and one was the domestic. The international cable restored, but it was only connecting the main island, and the other islands that were not connected, Hapai, through the domestic cable, they restored on 10th of August. So we are also using, to solve the IR problem, we are also using the DCM maps to see where the actual spots are where the coverage is not available. You will see in the black, these are the areas where the coverage are not there. We did it for Tonga, but we also did it for for Fiji as a pilot as well. You will see the places where there is purple, the coverage is not there. What it means that the population that is living there, they will not get early warning messages if you are even sending it through mobile services. And usually these are the high areas, but how we use the AI is we use the satellite images, and we compare the satellite images to the two satellite images to see where is the resident households. And using that and the coverage maps, we can evaluate where the exact population that is living in it is not under the coverage. And we can, right now we have done it only for the mobile services, but this could be extended to radio services and the other broadcast media as well. Now, this is the reason why we do it on case-to-case basis, because it's highly data-centric, and the resources and the servers that are required, we cannot do it live for every place on the world. So we do it where it's needed, especially in the disaster zones, to see where the resources that are available could be deployed by exactly pointing out the disruptions where they are. Now, coming to the second solution, why we do all this because we intend to use the cell broadcast. Cell broadcast is a technology, as I mentioned, is where we want to use cellular mobile, even those that are in the feature phones that could receive the early warning. So it has been deployed in many countries in the world, in Asia Pacific as well. I understand in Philippines, the cell broadcast is also working. But there are still a lot of countries where the cell broadcast has not been implemented. So again, just to elaborate more how the cell broadcast work, I use a video that was used and distributed by in UK before the trials that were done in January on the cell broadcast. And the trials were more than 99% successful. So just to give you a short idea how cell broadcast work, we'll go through this video. The voice maybe.
Looks like this and sounds like this, appearing on your screen until you acknowledge it. If you receive an emergency alert, you should stop what you're doing, read the alert if it's safe to do so, and do what it says. Emergency alerts are trusted. They will only ever be sent by the emergency services or the government. They send the same message to all compatible phones within an area of risk, so they don't use your phone number, collect data, or track your movements. You don't need to register or download an app, and they're completely free to receive. The technology has already been used successfully in many other countries, helping to save lives from floods, acts of terrorism, and fires.
So this was a short video on this, but there are some innovations also coming in cell broadcast. Just to mention a few over here, device-based geofencing, smart switching, non-terrestrial networks. I will go a little more on that. But of course, we will have explanation on all of these during our panel discussion as well. So stay tuned on this. So for the AI, we have developed an AI subgroup, and you will see some of the big names that are already a part of it. Microsoft, Google, along with UNDRR, GSMA, they are part of the AI for subgroup, and we have specific big events in which we have deployed the AI for Good Summit and others that we have been involved in under the AI for Good platform. So going from the terrestrial technologies to some of the upcoming satellite ones, this is the structure of the Galileo system that has been tested and trialed as well. So there is an opportunity to send directly the message from the space to the mobile set. And this uses the GPS signal, so doesn't need any connectivity. The header is there. It's a little technical, but this trial has already been, I think, done in Toulouse and successfully, and they want to put it in around 2025 throughout. So what the opportunity is that you can target a beam, and within that beam, using the satellite, you can send us using the GPS signal and alert to the system. So it's a one-way system, a broadcast kind of system, and broadcast could be controlled through a beam. So this is another area in which a lot of development is done. The other is, of course, the LEO satellite constellations that are working. We already have the Starlinks, the Project Kuiper, OneWeb that are going about. So the LEO satellite networks, they also provide very resilient technological solutions, but there are some challenges involved in that. For example, the space debris. The reflections from the LEO satellite constellations, they are hurting some of the deep space exploration as well because of their reflections. Plus, there are also some regulatory barriers that are hurting the full usage of the LEO satellite constellations that are already there. Not many countries had opened the full regulations to allow the LEO satellite to deploy. And then there are some reliability issues because there's a new technology that is coming. So continuous mobile coverage, especially in mobility, is a challenge right now. But what we hear that they are solving this in the next generation of satellites, especially using the inter-satellite links and the laser links amongst the satellites as well. So going on, in ITU, we have the WRC, World Radio Communication. The direct-to-device is a big issue that is being discussed and harmonized we are going to discuss the bands, and these are already in discussions in Working Party 4C under 1.13, the IMT direct-to-device, and the bands that are being discussed are from 694 to 2.7 gigahertz. You will see these are lower bands, and these are mostly used by the terrestrial mobile operators as well. So these are also being discussed for the direct-to-device. And also under 1.12, the IoTs through NGSOs, they are also being discussed under the Working Party 4C, and eventually the decision would come under WRC 27. So finally, 2 slides on how we can get involved. Of course, a financial contribution is something that we would like to have for the whole 4 pillars. But this is not that we are always looking into. We are looking into the expertise, so how we can use the solutions, technological solutions, in a way that we can connect everyone, sharing experiences, and also some pledge commitments, some regulatory interventions to allow some of the technologies to be harnessed for early warning solutions. And there are different ways we can work. We are not, as I mentioned, our membership is not only government, we also work with the private sector and the academia as well. So AI for early warning for all, the group is something, if you have some solutions using AI, we would be very willing to hear from you. And I think this is one of my last slide. Thank you. And over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you very much, Amir, for this overview and on all the different opportunities we see. And with this, I would like to move to the panel session and actually invite our panelists to join us here on the podium. I would like to invite, first of all, Bryce Hartley, who is Senior Strategic Partnerships Manager at GSMA, so the Association of Mobile Network Operators. And as Amir mentioned, GSMA is also co-hosting this event with us. Welcome. I would also like to ask to the floor Emmanuel Estrada, who is Vice President for Regulatory Development and Strategy at Globe Telecom. And Philippe Latt, who's president and co-founder at Leo Blue. That's one of the companies who is doing some exciting work on new technologies. And last but not least, LK Makasil, who's program manager at Cruise. That is the Climate Risk Early Warning Systems Initiative that is doing some amazing work on early warning systems in the least developed countries, the LDC and the small island developing states. Welcome everyone to this panel. So with this, we'll have a few questions, but I want to make sure that we have some time for questions from the floor, so please be ready for that. My first question is to you, Bryce. Amir already mentioned the Disaster Connectivity Map, the DCM, and GSMA is a partner together with the ETC, the World Food Programme's Emergency Telecommunication Cluster, and ITU on developing and building and using these maps. And my question is, if you could please tell us a little bit more about the use of the DCM for better preparedness, but also particularly in the context of the Early Warnings for All initiative. You know, how are we using these maps, and why are they so useful? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. And we're very proud to work together with the ITU and the WFP on these disaster connectivity maps. And as Amir had mentioned, they're an excellent tool when it comes to the response phase in terms of helping first responders understand where there isn't mobile coverage temporarily and they'll need to bring another form of communication, such as VSAT or VHF radio. And on the preparedness side, it's also a really excellent tool to evaluate what does coverage look like during ordinary times to determine where maybe mobile-enabled early warning systems are particularly effective, where perhaps mobile coverage needs to be expanded to ensure that everyone is covered by such a system, as well as to prepare for alternative means of alerting people in areas that perhaps at the moment don't have mobile coverage. So as part of the Early Warnings for All initiative, the DCM is used for the country assessments to do precisely this, to help figure out how best to roll out these systems. And another area we're quite interested in is doing some pilots around high-resolution versions of the DCM. So this would be where the regulator and the MNOs provide us with mobile infrastructure data, and then we can create precise simulations of where coverage really is, which on one hand helps us validate the data we already have, which is largely a sort of proxy data based on connections, and it allows for more granular connectivity analysis. So one of the places we're currently exploring such a pilot is in Kenya, with the Communications Authority of Kenya, the regulator there. If there's any countries here in the region, in Asia and the Pacific, we'd be more than happy to do a pilot somewhere here. So do get in touch with myself, Vanessa, or Amir if you are interested in one of these pilots.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, and very important, I think we're always trying to improve, of course, the reliability and the information from the DCM, so always very much interested in new partnerships. Thank you very much. My next question is to Emanuel Estrada. Very often, of course, when disasters strike, networks go down. So my question to you is, how can we ensure the reliability and the resilience of networks, especially mobile networks during disasters, and also a little bit what kind of policies are important to improve the reliability?
Well, thank you for having us here, and I'm glad to be back in another session such as this one. Primarily, we need to start at the point of when you are designing the network. In a archipelagic country such as the Philippines, we have moved towards a resiliency by design framework as early as 1998. By doing that, we are able to make sure that the locations of the sites that we have for critical nodes are well clear from any potential hazards. But this is quite challenging because it means that you have to have a lot of information about geological hazards. You need to have historical information, the traditional typhoon facts. You need to have information about where the landslides are going to happen. And it's fairly crucial that you have this information upfront when you're planning at the start. The second one is you need to be able to provide a business continuity and risk reduction plan all across throughout your operational framework. For example, in Globe, when we were preparing for the movement of the Twin Valley fault lines, which we call the big one, we conceptualized a project called Jupiter. And what it was we took an assessment of using the JICA information about the impact of the big one in Metro Manila. We assessed that in this case, which parts of the network are going to be vulnerable, which are going to be down, and then plan around that so that when the big one actually happens, then we are able to mobilize well ahead such that we're able to recover the service specifically, initially, for the first responders. And we use this particular initiative and continuously update it such that we have new information available. The network keeps on changing. The architecture of the network keeps on changing as well. And then therefore you have to revise the plan. By keeping that plan constantly updated, then you are aware that at some point in time, when something big like that happens, then it's easy for us to be able to recover back the service. The second one is making sure that we have such a principle about making some of the sites look normally abnormal. What do you mean by that? When Typhoon Nondoy hit us in 2009, we realized a lot of our cabinets that are on street levels start to get flooded out, so we lose broadband connectivity and fixed line service in many parts of the Metro Manila area. What we did, we took out up to where did the flood levels come. So this is now learning from the experience. Then we have pedestals running on top, such that then the cabinets on the streets are way beyond the traditional flood levels. But again, the climate is changing. We're getting more floods, more areas are getting flooded, so we now need to change and revalidate that. So across the entire life cycle of the network, you have to have resiliency by design. You have to have procedures that allow you to predict, prepare, and then respond ahead of the disaster or the catastrophe well ahead. But right now, the climate is changing. We now have more storms down south in the areas where we normally don't have storms. So we now need to rechange and re-architecture the network in south of the Philippines, Mindanao, for example. And that's how we have to prepare for it and make sure that it's ready and available at the time when we most need it first. And then it's not just the telco itself, because you now have to worry about the entire ecosystem when something happens. Experience, when we get hit by a typhoon, we're able to restore the service within a certain period of time based on our restoration time objectives. But if we can't get the power back on, then we are running practically on gas and fuel, running some of the critical sites so that you have a coverage blanket, umbrella sites as we call it, and maintaining the critical sites. So we now have to work with the other people in the ecosystem to make sure that we're able to also respond to getting the power back on, roads cleared, because the moment you need to restore your facilities and the roads are all blocked, then you can't move. So again, when responding to a disaster as this, maintaining the network is one thing, but getting people to act together so that we can recover back the service for electricity, clear the roads for emergency crews and repair crews is also important.
Great, thank you very much. And I think also you highlight, I think, the importance of data and the information that we have on the hazards and what's going to happen, which I think, is a nice link also, of course, to the other pillars about the risk information, about, the work that on monitoring, and so really nicely this link, and of course also the dependence of the networks on the energy, which is a big problem. Now, when terrestrial networks go down, Philippe, you will be talking a little bit more about this, and Amir already mentioned the opportunities of what we often refer to as direct-to-the-device technology, so where messages are sent from satellites direct to phone, and I think this is really something which is revolutionary and which will change not just emergency telecommunications, but many, many, many other things, because it addresses a lot of the challenges in terms of the people we can reach. It will overcome a lot of the barriers and challenges in terms of rural areas and remote areas where we don't have connectivity. So Philippe, my question is, how can direct transmission of alerts to the population from space using existing terminals like just our phones complement terrestrial networks in isolated areas or during network failures?
Thank you, Vanessa. So before to answer to your question, I just tell you a short story, but a true one. 3 years ago, during the COVID phase, I was in Paris, in the metro of Paris, and suddenly I received an alert on my smartphone saying that someone around me has the COVID. It was the first time and the last I received this message, and I was a bit surprised, and I had a look on how does it work. And I learned that this application, which was developed by the French government, was using Bluetooth. And so, as I was working in space for 35 years, I think to myself, but if it's possible to send an alert for these kind of things, why it's not possible to use exactly this technology for sending alerts to people everywhere in the world from satellites? So, of course, I discussed the idea with a lot of people. They all say me that it's impossible because Bluetooth is a low-distance system, but it's not. It's really possible. So we have a patent. We deposit a patent to show that it's possible. And so now we are developing a system that is able to send information directly from space to the smartphone of everyone in the world, on the existing smartphone, everyone in the world. So our idea is really to develop a small module, like a small box, that we can put in a lot of existing satellites, because we discussed a bit about the problems of a number of satellites and all of these things. So the idea is not to create another constellation. It's more to take benefit about all the satellites that are under construction launch each year to find the small places on these satellites, then to use all the existing system to send the information to the satellites, and then using the same protocol like CAP and so on, when the satellite is passing above the area in which you had to send information, you send the information, and all the people in very large area, they will be able to receive directly on the smartphone or in a small connected object using Bluetooth. In fact, we all have Bluetooth everywhere, in fact, on all the objects. And so to either to alert them or either to inform them, because we spoke about resilience, but it could work as well after the disaster, to be able to send this kind of information. Of course, there are some limitations in the number of information you can send. We are not doing SpaceX, we are not doing direct to self or doing Instagram in the middle of a desert, but it's enough to send a lot of information to people. So we are working in this solution, which is really complementary with terrestrial network, because we have seen that in certain area it's not possible, or it's not it's doable, but it's very expensive to put antenna everywhere. So for this area, it could bring a solution for all the maritime area, and of course, as I told you, after for resilience aspects. So this is roughly what we are doing in Leo Blue Company.
Thank you very much. I think these are really exciting news and exciting times ahead. And also, as you mentioned, that traditionally there's been a lot of sort of competition between mobile and satellite, and I think here we really see it's coming together, and it's complementary, the terrestrial and the satellite work. My next question is for Elke Makasil. Elke, what are the key challenges faced by multilateral funders in financing early warning systems, and how can these challenges be addressed? And also, how can funders ensure that their investments are sustainable and have long-term impact?
Thanks, Vanessa. Good morning, colleagues and partners. Thanks to ITU and GSMA for giving us the opportunity to be part of this panel. So in Amir's presentation earlier, he mentioned about the critical need for financing early warning systems. So that's where CRUISE comes in. So I'm from the Climate Risk Early Warning System CRUISE initiative. So very briefly, we are a specialized financing mechanism focusing on investing on early warning systems, particularly in least developed countries and small island developing states. So we're operational in almost more than 80 countries already in Africa, Asia Pacific, and the Caribbean, and we have 12 member countries contributing to the CRUISE Trust Fund. In terms of the scale of the challenge of early warning, we all know that 1/3 of the countries who self-reported, actually they emphasize that there's really a big gap in terms of access to risk information and also monitoring observations and preparedness and response. And in terms of financing, there's really no global estimates on how much actually is needed to finance all these gaps in terms of early warning systems. In fact, the term access, there's really no clear definition on how we can say that there's really universal access to early warning systems. However, there's a lot of knowledge available saying that the return of investment on early warning is really very high, and technology innovations actually help reduce the cost of early warning. For a multilateral fund like CRUISE, of course, we face a number of challenges, one of which is the fragmentation at the country level of different actions, and even the multiple financing channels. That's also a big challenge for us in terms of alignment. And also, secondly, is we're always faced with this challenge on how to sustain the infrastructure and capacities that we invest in the countries, with a huge turnover, maintenance of infrastructure, etc. And third challenge is this perceived bias on financing for infrastructure. So there's really a lot of investments going to infrastructure, and often we don't invest much on capacities and the foundational elements of early warning systems. So in CRUISE, we employ the people-centered approach in all our investments in the LDCs and SIDS. We make sure that there's a coherent alignment of our investments with the national priorities in the countries. And we rely heavily on our implementing partners, that's World Bank, WMO, UNDRR, and soon the Red Cross and the ITU, to ensure that there's stakeholders' engagement in developing the projects that they request CRUISE to finance. And there's a coherent methodology in terms of needs assessment, because there's a lot of needs, a lot of demand, and we want this we want to make sure that these are all validated with the key stakeholders in the countries. And yes, we also make sure that we give equal emphasis to the foundational elements of early warning system, not just on infrastructure, but also in terms of governance, institutional capacity building support. And I think this is very critical to sustain the investments on early warning systems. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And as you just mentioned, ITU is also becoming an implementing partner, and we're very, very excited and grateful for that. And also, again, I think sometimes very important for the donors also to coordinate, because there's so many things, so many priorities, and so the needs are very high. So it's important to have this also coordination amongst donors. Bryce, I will get back to you now. And I have a question on cell broadcast and location-based SMS. We heard a little bit about it in Amir's presentation. We know that currently 45 countries in the world have implemented cell broadcast and or location-based SMS. Some countries have both. And Bryce, can you tell me a little bit more about cell broadcast, but also Amir briefly mentioned some of the innovations in cell broadcast. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Vanessa. So, as you mentioned, it's already available. It's already available in 45 countries. One of which is the Philippines, which is a huge accomplishment, certainly by the government of the Philippines and the mobile network operators who made this possible. And I think it's proof that it can work and it can be scaled in a variety of settings. We also see in India, where it's been implemented in a number of regions across China, the Republic of Korea, and in Japan. So it is certainly a region, and there's many more countries that are underway. Thailand, for example, is in the midst of adopting cell broadcast, and more that have expressed interest. So in terms of the benefits, one of the key benefits is around network congestion. So when you send out an SMS, this is very costly. There's absolutely a cost every single time an SMS is sent. And when you're talking about large countries, there can be quite a bit of congestion where you could actually have a substantial delay. So maybe the first few people do get it quite quickly, but others it could be hours, which in the case of disasters, every minute, every second counts. Cell broadcast, by comparison, you could be alerting millions upon millions of people in a matter of usually not less than 5 seconds. So this is quite an innovation. It also creates, particularly in large contexts, it's financially advantageous, because you build one center and you have sort of an ongoing yearly cost, but how many you send it to isn't really affected. So that's, I think, quite special. And then in terms of innovations, although this technology has been around since 1999, which is great because it's tried and true. It's not it's not a satellite. It's not as exciting, but it is very useful. And we have now some new innovations, not necessarily with cell broadcast itself, but our devices, which allow cell broadcast to behave differently. So one of those is geofencing. So in the past, when you send out a cell broadcast message, it goes to all devices, regardless of subscriber or even your intended sort of area, but it's anyone within reach of the towers which are transmitting the message. With geofencing on devices, you can make sure that even if, say, devices are within range, you don't accidentally send it to them if they're beyond the alerting area. So this helps prevent over-alerting, which can erode trust, because sometimes in large flat areas in particular, one tower might go beyond the reach, and then this can be a problem. Like if there's say, a flood happening right here in Pasay, and you're warning people all the way up north in Baguio or something that would be, not ideal, or even, just an hour away, maybe in Rizal or something. This could create distrust, because they'd say, it's nowhere near me. Why are you sending me a message? So this new geofencing with devices is quite helpful. The other innovation is around footprinting. So you can now take a snapshot of everywhere the message has been sent in terms of which devices, so with a unique identifier, not with their phone number, and how many. And this allows for follow-up. Also, with the geofencing, you can ensure that maybe someone that at the moment, say the evacuation area is just this building, APMCDR, or PICC that we're in, let's say you were outside the building, but you come in whilst the emergency is still happening. With the new sort of innovations, we can ensure that you receive a message even if you weren't there during the initial blast. And we can tell who's received the first initial one and who's ready for a follow-up, like the all clear sign, which is, again, makes it much more effective. The other, I think, really interesting innovation, in particular in so many countries in the region that are very linguistically diverse, is a multilingual aspect to cell broadcast. Previously, we were only able to send one sort of message at a time. So say in Canada, you would send first in English, and then 1 minute later you cancel it and you send again in French, but this can cause problems. Some people who are English speakers might try to reinterpret the French and get it wrong, and it can create some confusion. Now with sort of smart multilingual switching, the message can be set to up to 25 languages, and based on your device's language. So for example, I was in Korea for an event, and we got a cell broadcast warning. And so on my phone, it was in English, even though in my colleagues, it was in Chinese, and our local counterparts in Korean, which creates a more coherent and more effective way to warn people. And also, these days, many devices can have text-to-speech for persons with disability, which again makes cell broadcast and CAP more accessible. And then lastly, we are now able to send symbols and images over cell broadcast on 5G, thanks to the recommendation by the 3GPP standard. So this again allows for a bit more nuanced information to be sent over cell broadcast technology.
Thank you. I think so many advantages, and as you said, it's not a new or fancy technology. It's established. We know it works. It has so many advantages, and this is why, as part of ITU's work on early warnings for all, we really promote the implementation of cell broadcast. We try to increase awareness about its advantages, and we hope that many more countries will be implementing cell broadcast over the next few years in the region. Actually, Thailand is also, I think, just starting to implement. Going back to you, Emmanuel, we heard about the complementarity between terrestrial and satellite services, and maybe if you can tell us a little bit more about how non-terrestrial networks and direct-to-device solutions can improve the reach and effectiveness of early warning systems.
Well, yes. Thank you, Vanessa. Definitely, the availability of non-terrestrial networks and direct-to-device will be a major improvement to the way we deliver emergency alert messages. When you come to think of it, during a disaster, a calamity, the most vulnerable facility that's there are power lines and telecommunications. You cannot send an emergency message when you do not have the network or the network is down. But with direct-to-device, you know that you have another medium on which to deliver it to normal and standard handsets. So there's no need for special handsets. Historically, it used to be that we use satellite for disaster communications in a different manner. When the Mount Pinatubo erupted, we were bringing satellite terminals to the affected areas to provide connectivity for the Philippine Volcanology Institute, and as well as communications on the ground for first responders. But this requires special terminals. Not everybody can have a special satellite terminal on his person or in his home. But with direct-to-device, that changes everything, because now with your standard handset, you should be able to receive as well the emergency alert message. And if Philip's concept of running emergency messages via Bluetooth becomes reality, then it's even more better because then you can have Bluetooth on every handset, regardless it's not a smartphone, you still have a Bluetooth. You have a small tablet with you, it has Bluetooth. So that will be even a bigger game changer. And that's the secret of emergency warning messages. You have to find every single possible methodology and technology, or not even a technology itself, to deliver the messages. So here in the Philippines, we even use batingao, batingao, church bells, to warn people simply because of that. And that's the reason why for these particular exercises, when you have the NTN and the D2D already really running upstream, it's a big game changer and will help save more lives for emergency warning.
Thank you so much. And again, I think highlighting the spread of mobile phones. Today, we know that 8 out of 10 people in the world own a mobile phone. And we always say that it means people have a siren system in their pocket, and we really need to use this, and this is true even more as we move away from not just being able to send alerts over mobile networks, which again, we know in certain situations there's resiliency issues and they can go down, but the developments in satellite systems. LK, another question for you. How can multilateral funders support the capacity building efforts of countries that really still today lack robust early warning systems? And what strategies can be employed to ensure that these countries can effectively implement and also maintain these systems?
Thank you. So for CRUISE, capacity building is a means to an end. So it's an input to a result that we want to achieve in the countries and in the regions where we invest. Based on our experience, there are 3 main approaches in terms of capacity development. So first is, of course, the traditional approach wherein countries develop comprehensive training plans based on training needs assessments conducted amongst the national institutions. The second one, which proved to be very innovative, is this cascading approach. We invest a lot on regional projects wherein we support the capacity building of regional institutions and regional centers, and this expertise is cascaded down to the national meteorological and hydrological services so they can better deliver early warning to the country. The third one is the twinning approach, wherein Met Office twins or become a peer of another Met Office, and together they find solutions in terms of how to address the early warning gaps, and this has proven effective in terms of providing services and capacity on numerical weather prediction, modeling, climate services, research, and development. So, CRUISE, we invest a lot on capacity building, but of course we'd like to encourage the government to do the same and always reinforce this positive signaling on the importance of capacity building and also in terms of innovative practices to develop institutions in the countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have another few questions, but I just want to give the opportunity now to open the opportunities for questions from the floor. So I don't know if there's anyone, please raise your hands. I see one hand at the back. Please go ahead. I don't know, sorry, do we have microphones, thank you. Please, if you could just state your name, affiliation, and if your question is addressed to any specific panelists. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Christian Apolinario from Humanity and Inclusion. So I will address the questions to all the panelists. So since we are talking about the leveraging digital advancement, so I just want to know, are there any cultural beliefs or religious beliefs that could hinder the effectiveness of the early warning system? How can we adapt our messaging and outreach to be respectful of these beliefs? Because we all know that every community have diverse representation of people. There are persons with disabilities. There are indigenous people. So I just want to know your ideas about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I think, addressing the diversity of communities at risk is one of the things that that we really look at.
Vanessa,
Maybe,
may I?
yeah, shall I? Please go ahead.
Especially in experience in the Philippines, you can't put up a cell site when the local indigenous people have some cultural beliefs about the presence of your cell site tower. So then the challenge for you is to how you're able to get to warn them at the right point in time. And that's the reason why I am an advocate of one single statement, using every possible single means to provide the alert message. By combining the capabilities as what Amir, my colleague here, has previously presented, use radio, television, church bells, alarm signals. In the old days, I remember when there is a storm coming in, I would hear a siren blasting 1, 2 times to tell you that it's now signal number 2 in Metro Manila. In order to address that, we cannot simply rely on digital technologies, but leverage on every single possible means to alert and warn the people. We can talk about AI and all that sort of stuff, but if you have a community that tells you, no, I don't want you there, then you're kind of like leaving them unprotected and unwarned. That's why the principle that I always advocate is to use every single possible means. I don't care if it's a carrier pigeon, it's a siren, it's a board, it's a bell, it's broadcast, it's TV. Important. But then you have to be very careful that the messaging is consistent so that then there is no trust erosion. We cannot trust in the Philippines, we call them marites. Natatawa sila because they know what marites means. Marites means gossip. We cannot use that. Unfortunately, I was advocating any single means except that. Because that's confusing, that's going to be dangerous, it's going to kill people, and it's not going to work. Any views from you?
Please go ahead.
So related to the question, we previously did some social anthropological work to look at sort of what means to convey sort of preparedness messages to different communities. So when we were doing this for India, according to our research, animation resonated very well because this sort of across caste, across sort of different types of person is more neutral. Because that way, because there was a fear when we did the based on the research findings that if you have a physical person, that they might think, this is someone beneath me or someone not related to me. Maybe it's someone I don't identify with, so I don't really trust. Versus an animation allowed it to be more cross-cutting because of the cultural beliefs. Versus in Ghana, when we did the same research, they said they felt cartoons were talking down to them. They felt like it's for children, and they felt it was very rude to use like an animation. So despite the same thing, there was a very different implication. So in Ghana, we asked some of our, we had just sort of ordinary people from the community that did a self-video with a phone, because then it really is, and with a few different, obviously we did some testing and it was a few different people, but then, so rather than sort of a very flashy professional animation or a video, it was someone they could relate to that they really felt was, that they trusted. So I think to the question from the audience, it is critical to look into sort of these cultural nuances and how the same thing that might work so well in one place could have very different implications in another.
Thank you. And I think this is also really reflected at the Early Warnings for All initiative because, of course, for Pillar 4, which is very much about the communities and feedback mechanisms and making sure that the communities, the people at risk for whom this whole initiative is for these people, that their voice is heard and that they are involved from the beginning into the early warning systems, and that their preferences of channels, but also the way they want to receive messages is really is respected. That's very important. Are there any other questions? I see your questions here. Microphone's coming.
Hello, good morning. I'm Lay, a private individual, maybe an advocate from Bicolor region in Camarines Sur. So in normal circumstances, we experience one typhoon at a time in normal circumstances. But in 2020, late 2020, Bicolor region, especially Camarines Sur, particularly our city, Iriga City, experienced 3 consecutive typhoons in a month's time. So the very crucial time there is the time after the first typhoon. Because the first typhoon we were already warned, we have the proper information, we have disseminated the warnings and all. And the preparation for the second and the third typhoon in a month's time that's where we became blind actually. Some of the municipalities in our district actually decamped their evacuation because they thought typhoon is already gone. Quinta, or Molavi in international name, is already gone. But in our city, during that time, I'm the weather monitoring person. So I recommended to the city mayor that we stay on the evacuation centers. So aside from us, none did so. So others fled the evacuation center, but eventually after 3 to 4 days, because Raleigh, Goni International is coming, they re-evacuated. So this misinformation actually, not misinformation, but being blind because of the initial typhoon, caused municipalities and other other provinces at risk during this time. And we appreciate hearing the technology of D2D that will be able to address this. But my question is, how far are we in having at least majority of the key decision makers having this type of technology to avoid being blind in complex disasters like this? Because we don't really experience 3 consecutive typhoons in 1 week after another. So thank you for the question, and thank you for all the knowledge that you shared for us.
Thank you very much for sharing this experience, which I think is, that's the new reality also, many things happening at the same time, and we need to be prepared. Are there any, Amir, do you want to?
Thank you. I think some of the technologies have already been tested, for example, the Galileo one. But I think the regulators and the ministries, this is the time that they start implementing or coming up with the regulations, so that when the technologies are available, they could be harnessed as soon as possible. In many of the cases in Asia and the Pacific, some of the technologies, the uptake, it gets delayed. And the real benefits that we can earn from it gets delayed. Similarly, for D2D technologies, there could be the regulations, we have to see they are in place, because it's not only that they can bring some benefits, but there are also some challenges, some competitive issues, some other that are beyond the warnings that have to be seen as well. So a balanced regulation in place would be something that would be that we should work right now.
To add to what my colleague Amy was saying, if you recall earlier in the slides, there's this WRC 27 was mentioned. And under that, there's a working party that looks into the different frequency allocations for NTN and for D2D. Now, what it's telling me right now is that when we left WRC 23 in Dubai in December of 2023, we have not landed those frequency bands, which is fairly crucial for the D2D systems to work. Which means we're still going to wait until 2027. But wait, there's actually more that's happening on the ground. Together with GSMA, there's a task force that's defining something like a global policy or a framework that will allow the regulators across the globe to have a common set of regulations in how we will adjust and adapt to when D2D comes in, so that it becomes complementary, especially for EWS. And then internally, with our company, we have tested technologies that are already in here. In 1998, there was an interesting technology, and I know you might recall this, the GMPCS. And GMPCS is already working in some countries. We have tested one system using GMPCS that dates back to 1998, fairly recently, and we're able to get alert messages. Except it's not D2D, because D2D uses your standard handsets. GMPCS requires a handset with the GMPCS receiver on it, so it's slightly different. So while waiting for the real deal to happen and for your Bluetooth to happen, Philippe, then we still have this capability that we can leverage on. And we have also tested one D2D with another company that he still has to launch his constellation anyway, compared to Starlink that has this constellation already up. And we're able to receive location-based SMS, but we haven't tried to run cell broadcast on it because I think they're not yet ready. They're not yet ready for that on the satellite space.
It's true. So on cell broadcast, there have been some tests and some hypotheses in terms of if we put sort of usual radioactive network equipment and the equipment that is used for terrestrial networks, including cell broadcast entities, into space, there have been some tests, and provisionally, we do believe it could be possible to even send a cell broadcast like the same technology from satellites to devices, but it has yet to be seen, but it's definitely something to be done in partnership, I think, between the satellite industry, such as Philippe, and operators such as Globe, because it can create sort of, ideally, a seamless link. Because what matters for the person being alerted is not where your message is coming from terrestrial or outer space, is just, does it work? And so I think with these, there's a lot of potential, and we're very excited, certainly within the working group and with 3GPP, with ITU, to set these standards so that it is, as Amir said, easier to roll out as and when it becomes available.
Great.
Maybe just to add one thing, there are some handsets that are already available, but these are very high-end handsets from iPhone, and I think in Xiaomi as well, but they are only limited to China, that are already available, and the ones that are working in China, that are limited to China, they are on their own. Yeah. But they are high-end solutions that are available, and it would take some time for the economies of scales to take place and the prices to come down. So this is why we are just putting, the regulations in place for the D2D solutions.
That's great. And I think this just also highlights the importance of all these different stakeholders and players to work together, and that includes the mobile handset producers, the chip makers, because sometimes a little change in the device, a tiny change in the chip, can actually open up opportunities for new technologies. I saw some other hands. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Can we have a microphone, please?
Yeah, good morning, I think. My name is Art Letim. I'm the Disability Inclusion Advisor, CBM Global, and I'm a person with visual impairment. My question is, how do we fact check the information if it is genuine or fake? Like an ordinary people do not understand what is the right information when it's sent to the community. And my number 2 question is, have you considered using the DR radio, digital radio, which is with a high frequency, which is easy to install and cheap to install? You only need to install just electrical wire and connect it to the high frequency radio, which can transmit all over the world at a very instant. And using this as well with the digital technology, which we are using. I'm a ham radio operator, a licensed ham radio operator. We are using the internet as well. But I don't think that we can transmit information to cell phones. Like, for example, for those last mile, which needs immediate information, but that has no cell site towers installed there. But with the digital radio, the high frequency radio, very easy to install, it's very cheap, combined with the cell broadcast with just a Bluetooth transmission within the last mile community. It is really very accessible for all. And also, my last question is, have you done with the vibration thing for the deaf, which can set the alarm like for the first warning, second warning, third warning? That's, for the third warning, is a continuous vibration, so informing the deaf that they have to leave their houses or go to the evacuation center. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me pick it up. Thank you for that very interesting question. Let me take it one by one. The first one, how do you know whether the message is not a fake message? In the Philippines, together with the Office of Civil Defense and the NDRRMC, which is the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Center, there is an ongoing protocol. There is an existing protocol that dates back to 2015, even before we started having the first cell broadcast in 2017, which means that any emergency alert message and warning can only emanate from the OCD and NDRMC. So, which means there's a process that lets the telcos know, or even the broadcast stations to know, that this particular message is legitimate. And you know how it happens. There is a protocol that we observe. There's a channel that is used. And once we get hold of the message, there is a second loop wherein we're able to ask somebody in NDRMC personally, that we know personally, to tell us, is it legit, is it accurate, and should we send it now or at some later date? And that's how we were able to address the first one. So that's the reason why early on, what I was saying is we cannot rely on DMARE testing. There's a very strict protocol for that, because if somebody sends you a wrong message by hacking to the system and you don't second validate the source of the message where it's officially declared as the local authority for the message, then you could be in trouble. On the second one, I fully agree with you. Let me tell you a story. In the Baguio earthquake in 1990, the very first communications that I had, I was working with government towards Baguio to understand what happened, was via amateur radio, because I'm a ham radio myself. I practice ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service. And that's the reason why I keep telling everyone, when we got hit by Yolanda, the very first thing that we forgot, but there are amateur radio service operators in there that are on air, and we are scrambling around trying to find satellite phones. That means we are not utilizing every single means to communicate. Amateurs like you and me, we know how important it is. We will know how important it is. And that's why I fully agree with you that we can actually go through you. But there is one interesting challenge. Because we cannot have emergency alert messages sent directly to the amateur radios, it could be an innovation piece for the hams themselves, so that then we can do that. If you look at X1303 CAP protocol, it's fairly detailed, and any innovative ham radio operator might be able to try to do this. Now, if cannot get it direct to an amateur radio, maybe then we can establish a protocol by working through the amateur clubs that are on the ground, by getting sure that they are part of the protocol that should also receive the message, that they should validate after receiving the message, so that they can send it out as well to the hams on the ground. Ham radio was also what we use in order to convey messages of the dead people, identification, and the rest in the Baguio earthquake. And there's a lot. That's the reason why I keep saying, use every single means to deliver. Do not leave any of these things behind, even if they say, oh, it's just amateur radio. They're not professional. They're not digital. No, but really, no. The amateur service is very valuable in times of disaster. You cannot dislodge them from that one.
Maybe just to add something. So you're regarding your first question, it's when it's speaking information coming from space, it's really important because you can be jacked and so on by someone who is doing false signal and so on. So this is why in our case we have foreseen authentication system. This means that your system within the Bluetooth you will have a signal. You will have an authentication that allow you to be sure that you are receiving the information from the good satellites. And regarding your question about how all the people could be informed whatever the situation, in our case, the use of Bluetooth is very interesting because, in fact, everything is very cheap. So, for example, we are working for a specific bracelet, I don't know the term, for fishermen in Senegal, because the fishermen, they cannot take the smartphone to go to fish, but they need something very simple that could inform them for a specific problem of weather. And so it's very cheap because we are using small pieces that are, for €1, you can buy and develop a lot of things for nothing. And so the idea is really to be able to develop very specific object depending on the needs of people that could be very different in terms of needs.
You know, Philip, you made a very interesting point. No? Today we have a lot of wearables on hand. They are able to receive cell broadcasts. But there's something that is missing. You receive the cell broadcast, but if you have a visual impairment, like our friend here, you won't be able to read it. But if text-to-speech is possible, then you will be able to understand that there's an alert message. And I think all of these are possibilities that we're actually looking at now. So then you don't have to bring your smartphone, diba?
Exactly. Yes. And actually, so to your point previously, Manny, and to your point from the speaker, in terms of amateur radio, there is a solution in terms of how NDRMC and other sort of disaster management authorities can plug into it. The one that at least I'm most familiar with is called Open Broadcaster. So there is an open source software that then it allows the authorities, so there is an authentication to be transmitted, or you can even buy a box for, I think, is something like $20. Yeah, it's quite cheap, and it can be then plugged into these amateur radios. And in terms of the authentication, what's very important is, as Manny said, in the Philippines, there is a sort of a manual process to check that it's authentic. But if we look at sort of cases from the US, they have iPod system, which is a very stringent sort of military-grade security that looks at who is trying to transmit the message and do they have authority over this area. So if you're the mayor, you only have authority to broadcast your alert within, say, your city limits. If you're female, you know, a federal authority, you have then the authority and you're authenticated to be, and iPOS processes this all the way through, and it's an API that allows it to be very quick, because again, it's so important that these solutions are timely, because every single minute, if we have to call to verify, that's, you know, minutes lost, I would say. And on the sort of accessibility side, also, so you have IVR for visual impairments, where you can have a hotline that you can call and you can hear sort of the different information, whether your nearest evacuation center is. And for people who are with hearing impediments, there's a text service where you can say, you know, press 1 for your nearest evacuation. So using something similar to USSD codes that allows still for persons with different accessibility needs to be met.
Great, thank you so much. And I think, you know, we were talking about these technologies, but it's, first of all, it shows how flexible they are, but it's also really about how we use and how we implement and adapt them to the specific needs of the communities. With this, maybe I have another question. Okay, you heard a lot about the different innovations and the things we can do. So really, one question, I guess, you know, for donors, we often wonder how, you know, how flexible are you in investing in innovations that maybe are not yet used, in technologies that are not yet used, but that show great potential? I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. It's a very interesting exchange that we're having right now, and there's a lot going on in terms of digital advancements and innovation. Innovation per se is not just a concept, but it has to be closely connected to the issue that you're targeting and also to the context. That's why it's important what our colleague is mentioning, that you have to maximize all the available channels and also tailor fit the message based on your audience. So in Cruise, we work a lot in LDCs and SIDS, and in most of them are in fragile and conflict contexts. So even a simple teleconferencing is already an innovation, just to make sure that communication is continuous. In the case, for example, in Tonga, we invested in a mobile app to make sure that even the hardest to reach populations can reach the early warning messages. And in Cambodia, for instance, a very community-based early warning system we reinforced that program, and now it's considered one of their national early warning system programs. So it depends. Innovation depends on actually how and why it is designed, and how you implement it. So with this assumption, actually, almost everything can be under the innovation umbrella. And for Cruise, we're very open to this. Innovation is one of our core principles when we look at investments, and we're a very agile and flexible financing mechanism. We demand innovation in all our financing windows. So this is a commitment from our end, and as what I've said earlier, we also expect the same from the government of the countries where we invest in, to provide this positive signaling and really reinforce this environment for innovation. Thanks.
Great. I think that's great news, especially for those who are innovating. With this, we just have a few minutes left. Philip, if you can just take 1 minute to say what would be the characteristics for you of an ideal universal alert system from space.
Yes, but we spoke a bit about the things, but what we really think in our case is that the fact that we're able to use all existing features, it's the key. I mean, for example, the new D2D devices, for example, for Starlink and so on, they need to have an iPhone 15 or 16, I don't know. So this means that it will take years and years to be largely deployed, maybe in 10 years. And so what we think is that the key is that to be able to address existing things, not to always do more, but do maybe less, but with existing things in another way. So this is our line, we can say.
Great, thank you. Mani, how can countries implement and optimize cell broadcast systems for effective early warnings? We heard that Philippines is one of the countries that has cell broadcast already.
Well, keep it up to date. That's the very first one. No, but seriously, integration of systems is important for this one. The second thing is mobile networks are quite good at delivering cell broadcast emergency messages, but globally there is one interesting fact: 96% of the world population is covered by at least a 3G or a 4G signal, but only 63 to 70% are actually using the service. And because there are barriers all across, there's barriers about cost, there's barriers about digital literacy, what do I need it for? There's issues about the cost of the handset, and then there are cultural issues that we initially also identified. And in order to make sure that we're able to optimize and make the best use of these technologies available to us, we need to address all of these items that are non-technical but are fairly important for using the mobile network, the service. Second, need to integrate with existing systems like we have been saying. I mean, I have open broadcast, so we should try that and see if we can push the messages to the amateur systems. Integrate with radio and TV, just as what's done by FEMA in the US. When we have the D2D, let's integrate everything back to D2D. And I think that's a very important concept. in order, it's not just a question of optimizing the system, but also making sure that everybody is able to use it by addressing the non-technical stuff, which are, I think, the most difficult to address, and we have to really push hard to do this.
Great, thank you. Bryce, in 30 seconds, can you say how AI-driven predictive analytics enhance disaster management and early warning systems?
I'll try to be very, very quick. So I think our stance, at least from GSMA, is that it's a very exciting technology, AI, but in emergency context, we should be extremely careful. We should not be testing emerging technologies on the most vulnerable populations. We should really be, there needs to be proper safeguarding in place. So I would say at the moment, we should be perhaps as cautious as possible when it's particularly user-facing, but AI can be great for analysis. There's so much data out there from mobile networks, from others around disasters, and AI can help us do our job more quickly to understand what this data means, and that's quite useful. And maybe lastly with CAP, the Common Alerting Protocol, together with the WMO, we're looking at how we can use AI to help us, those who are sending the messages, on quality assurance, and to sort of cross-reference. And so it's not maybe as exciting as these avatars that you might see that are AI-driven, but it is very useful for things like quality assurance, quality control of, say, CAP, to make sure that we didn't make a mistake as humans and that it alerts us. But there always we have a wide set of tools on responsible AI by design that I encourage you to look at. And one of the big ones is making sure there's always a human in the loop. There should be nothing going out without.
Great, thank you so much. We've run out of time. I don't have complete notes, but I think I just want to highlight two things. First of all, our approach in terms of Pillar 3 needs to be multi-channel. We need to be able and we need to push to use every available communication channel to reach those at risk. And I think the other important part is we need the donors, we need good regulation that allows for innovation. But also, most important, we need to adapt the technology to the needs of the people. It's not about the technology as such, it's about how it can be used. With this, I would like to thank, first of all, the great panelists, my colleague Amir, the audience for your interest and your questions, and also especially thank you, Bryce and the GSMA, for co-hosting this event. We were not able to address all the questions from the floor. If there's other questions, please be in touch with us, either after the session or by email, and we will get back to you. Thank you very much.